I interviewed Elsa, a member of our community, and here's what she said about boundaries.
It was a way to have me trust him. Like, oh, he was upfront and told me this information, and that's all there is. All the skeletons are out of the closet, and they weren't.
We're going to get to that part of the interview. But before we do, here are 4 things you need to know about setting boundaries. Number 1, when you communicate your boundary to an emotional abuser, they use it as a playbook on how to emotionally manipulate you. Number 2, boundaries can be implemented without any talking whatsoever. Number 3, boundaries are all about your safety. Number 4, emotional safety comes in layers. As you take action, you can see if you feel more safe or less safe, and then you can continue to take actions if you need more emotional safety. And Elsa's going to talk about how she used the strategies that we teach here at BTR to establish peace and emotional safety in her home. Welcome, Elsa.
Thank you.
She's been a podcast listener for a long time. It's always an honor to have podcast listeners on. So thank you so much for supporting the podcast by listening to it. Let's start with your story. Did you recognize your husband's abusive behaviors at first?
When I first met him 2 days in, he told me something that wasn't the truth. But I thought, wow, how vulnerable. He told me he cheated on a past partner, one time. It's grooming. I had no idea what grooming was, but it was a way to have me trust him. Like, oh, he was upfront and told me this information, and that's all there is. All the skeletons are out of the closet, and they weren't.
Yeah, he makes you think no one who's a liar would tell me this, so he must be telling me the truth. But he's only telling like the tip of the iceberg. You can't see what's underneath. And if he were to tell the truth, he'd say, I look at porn and masturbate every day. I've cheated on every girlfriend I've ever had or every partner, and I have every intention of cheating on you because I don't really want to be with one person. But instead, he lies and says, now everything is out on the table.
So it creates a false sense of safety. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's actually super scary because if it was before you were engaged, it's really alarming that they think in these sick, twisted ways. Like, oh, if I lie to her and she trusts me, that's the kind of woman I want to marry. Rather than a healthy person thinking, I would like a healthy relationship where we trust each other.
It was mind-blowing that it was planned and calculated before we were married. I noticed some things regarding his behavior. There was an instance when he omitted some information. And of course, at that point, I didn't consider it abuse. I just addressed it with him, was honest up front, and he was agreeable and said that I was right. And I thought, that's it. That's solved. And I felt like he heard me and we moved on. Once we were married, I noticed there was a lot more contempt. He was less agreeable if I brought things to him. And that's when I started to have some questions and feel quite out of sorts because it felt like such a change from when we were dating.
What was the nature of the information that he withheld?
We hadn't been dating that long, and I had a trip planned with a couple of my girlfriends to go to Europe. And I was going to be away for a couple months. He said, do you want to be exclusive? And it was like a big yes for me. When I was away, I felt like communication was difficult. I felt like he was hard to pin down. He said he was going to go camping one weekend, and I had this gut feeling that he may be going camping with someone he worked with who was quite a bit younger than him. And I asked him if he did. And first he said he went with just my dog because he was taking care of my dog. And then he said, oh, I went with some coworkers. I found out the truth about 6 months later that he had gone on a one-on-one camping trip with a 21-year-old when he was in his mid-30s. So that's obviously a red flag. But at the time, I was already pretty invested, and he denied anything happened. At first, he was quite understanding, but after a few days of him listening to my concerns that he withheld that information, he became quite pressuring that I get over it, in his words, and I worked through it.
Yeah, under those circumstances, it would have been hard to figure out, like, I need to learn how to set boundaries, right? Did you ever find out later that there was something that happened between them?
Looking back now, I think he was grooming a coworker. So I think it probably confused her quite a bit if I was to put myself in her shoes. He told me that she shot him down and said no.
So had he been able to, he would have.
Yes. And he said that 6 months later.
And then when they decide to tell you, it's calculated to hurt you when they feel like you're maybe having a great day or something's going well for you. So can you tell me when he told you this?
I think he did do that to keep me destabilized. This particular instance was before we got engaged. I think he was afraid I was going to leave him. So he told me now we had everything out in the open. Now you know everything. It was a lie.
Yeah. Back then, when you were going through it, what did you think was going on?
Before I met him, he'd been in the city with a lot of college students, young women, and he was in a kind of party atmosphere. So we were newly married and we moved to a different college town, and his behavior towards me changed. I thought, well, the problem lies with me. And he agreed. He agreed that the problem was me. I had said I had done counseling and I think I should take it back up. And he said, yeah, I think you should too. So he really let me go down that road, that it was my neediness or anxiousness that was the problem and that nothing had changed on his end. I need to do my own work. So I started counseling. And he did come to some of those early counseling sessions with me. And that's when we found out there was an addiction.
Did you find the therapy to be helpful?
No, no. I was pregnant. I was feeling very anxious in the pregnancy, and I wasn't able to put my finger on what was going on. I worried about the impact on my unborn child. So the goal was to reduce my anxiety.
Did you get diagnosed at that time?
No, we used it for insurance purposes, but I've never had a diagnosis of anything.
Oh, that's good. So many women get diagnosed with something during this time because instead of the therapist saying, this is your internal warning system telling you something's wrong, you're reacting in a totally normal way. Let's figure out why your warning system is going off. Instead of saying that, the therapist is like, you're just another crazy woman who's having too much anxiety and you're hysterical for no reason.
Ugh. That's the only message I was getting.
So the therapist doesn't help you figure out what's going on. She doesn't help you set boundaries, but of course you're going to keep trying.
Yeah, I knew something was different. So I kept bringing my concerns to him over and over. Something doesn't feel right. Something has changed. Turns out my gut is pretty sensitive.
Right.
And one day we were at the house and I thought to ask him, do you look at pornography? Because something in the conversation led me to ask the question. And he said, yes, I do, so that I don't bleep other women. And I was in shock. Like, it's a moment etched in my memory. I was shocked that he had never offered that information. That conversation had never come up.
Also, that his opinion, his viewpoint was that if he did not look at porn, he did not have the integrity or the ability or the adult skill of not having sex with someone that wasn't his wife. Like, that was his reasoning. I'm looking at porn for you because if I didn't do this, I would be out having sex with other women. And you don't want me to do that, do you?
It was progress in his mind.
Oh, that must have been devastating. I'm so sorry. When does the word addict come into play?
He said he had a sex addiction, and I kind of laughed. Like, I didn't think it was a real thing. Much like when he confessed about the 21-year-old girl, I think he could sense that I would have him leave the house. And so he found SAA and said, I'm going to go. And he went. At that point, I thought that was our only issue. I didn't think I'd need boundaries. And then I found out it was a much bigger issue than just looking at pornography.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is a systemic issue, and it breaks my heart when he lies and he says he's an addict and he's going to get help, because the help for wives of addicts centers around sort of leaving him alone and staying on your side of the street and working on your quote unquote codependency or your problems. But if he's abusive, you need someone to help you get off the street altogether because none of it is you.
Yes, that's what I was seeking from professionals. And I didn't get that. Once I knew he had an addiction, I started reading. And that was what was recommended. I didn't feel safe around his counselor, was not certified sex addiction therapist, but I was trying all these different things.
Even if the person would have been a certified sexual addiction therapist, the likelihood of them identifying the abuse is next to zero because they don't see it as an abuse issue. They're not certified abuse specialists. They're certified sexual addiction therapists. So they will identify anything he does as an extension of the addiction. So they'll say he's in addict mode, he's not in recovery, rather than he is abusive, which is a totally different thing for a woman to hear.
For sure. Yeah, he didn't want to leave the comfort of the home. We had a loft in our garage. He'd go sleep out there. And I took a trip to California to visit a friend to have some space. I had my daughter with me. And when I came back, he picked us up at the airport He barely acknowledged me. There was a lot of feeling of contempt, and I was like, I want him out of the home. And so I told him, and he raged and like tore things apart in the house. And I did call the police. They came. He left after that for 2 months. He still had access to my daughter. He'd still come and get her, but we really had no interaction.
Ah, okay. So here you're learning how to set boundaries to separate yourself from his harm at this point.
For sure. Yeah. So fast forward a couple months, he's still coming to get my daughter, but I try to have little to no contact with him in that exchange. And then we're at church on Easter, and I walk by where my daughter is in the playroom, and he's standing at the doorway of the playroom. He said he's sorry, and we start communication again, and we start to move forward and repair our relationship. And he eventually did move in after about a month. We were together for another 6 months, and it got worse. It got much worse. He cut off all communication that I had with his counselor because she would allow me to call her. I was no longer allowed to talk to her. He wouldn't talk to anybody in the church with me. He wouldn't let me be around if he was talking to his sister, who was quite a bit older than him, who had been kind of a support. So I basically was completely isolated, and the abuse escalated.
Right.
And so he was going on a trip to see his family, and I just knew. So I said, when you leave this time, you're not coming back in the home. When he first left, all I could think about was, how do I keep my daughter close to him? How do I make this work for him? My whole way of thinking was, what would he want? And then I started to think about, what do I want and what brings me peace? And that led me to make some choices for myself and my daughter. I didn't tell him that I changed my plan to move back to Canada, where I'm a citizen. I was just authorized to work in the United States, and he thought I would continue to pursue my green card and he could help me so that I could remain in the United States. And so for a couple months, he believed that he still had a certain amount of control over me. And when he found out, he was obviously very upset, but it protects me. I'm not a citizen there and I don't have any support.
And it protected you from prolonged legal abuse in terms of the divorce, but maybe not in terms of custody, because I have a feeling that you're going to bring up custody. Because this guy sounds like a coercive controller. And so it's very strange because they do things that seem really stupid because it's hurting them, but it's also hurting you. And it also seems very smart. And women in this situation are usually like, how can he be so smart and so stupid at the exact same time?
Yeah. It is a question that's crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I was living in the northern states near the Canadian border, and I just couldn't find anything in the city I was at for support. And so I mentioned he started SAA. They did have a group. And then I found a COSA group of about 4 or 5 women in that area. I just didn't find that I got much from it. So I just started looking for podcasts, and I stumbled across BTR. Being so isolated, it was my main support. The BTR podcast just started to connect the dots. I did read some books as well, but I would say the podcasts from BTR were the main thing that kept me rooted in reality, where I was like, yes, this matches. Because like you said, certain parts of COSA, there were certain things that I was like, yeah, sort of. But then listening to the podcast and the different people you would have on was the main thing that rooted me in the reality of what I was experiencing. And it was like a big, yes, this fits with what I'm experiencing. And that's what helped me in a lot of my decision making. And his counselor didn't know about the podcast, but it threatened him that I was learning what I was learning. His counselor even said to him at one point, she's reading these books. She's reading these books. And like, it threatened him because then I was no longer trapped in the chaos.
When you found the BTR podcast, was it kind of revelatory? Like, was it something totally new that you hadn't thought of or heard before? Or was it something that you did know inside, but you just didn't know you knew it?
I would say the latter for sure. I work in healthcare. I have some knowledge of like mental health. So as I started to listen to it, I'm like, yes, this makes sense as to what I already know. Like I knew about attachment and addiction. It was like I knew it was ill treatment, but I didn't think it was as calculated as it was. BTR episodes started to put pieces together.
When women find the podcast, they're like, yes, like they knew it, but they didn't have words for it, or they couldn't really bring it to the surface. And they're also like, what? How did I not know? That's how I felt. I was like, how am I a college graduate with a master's degree who doesn't want to be abused? How can I not realize I'm being abused? This is crazy. It's both I knew it and then like, how did I not know it? at the exact
Mm-hmm.
same time. And it's such a strange place to be where at least I felt so stupid that I didn't see it, but then also not stupid at all because I'd never been educated about it. And all of the
Yeah.
abuse checklists are like, does he control your transportation? And you're like, no. Does he trap you in a room? No. I mean, maybe he might trap you in a room. I'm not saying that he wouldn't. I'm just saying the classic abuse checklists didn't seem to fit my situation. It was just confusing.
The idea of like secret keeping is power over that really resonated with me. I'm like, yeah. Because at first I thought he didn't realize that it was painful for me, or he didn't realize the depth of like the impact of his actions. But then I circled around to the fact that it didn't really matter to him.
He uses your feelings to control you rather than listens or cares about your feelings.
Yeah,
So the only reason he pays attention to your feelings is to be able to manipulate you, control the situation, control the narrative. And that's where women, well-meaning, awesome, caring women, they don't know what they're dealing with. And so, of course, they're going to share their feelings with their husband because they think in sharing their feelings, they'll be able to resolve the issue. But with an abuser, sharing your feelings is literally offering them like a list of how to manipulate you better. That's why it's so important to know what you're looking at.
for sure. Yeah, trust your gut. How do you feel around him? That was a big one for me. I never felt calm. I always felt like something wasn't right. During divorce, they asked, do we want to subpoena his bank records? So I was like, okay, sure. And his bank records showed he was at a college bar every night. Then he started to harass me a lot through the parenting app. We had created this parenting plan when we lived in the US. And when the borders finally opened and we moved, we had no real concept of the impact it would be on my daughter, who was barely 2 at the time. I worked full time. She was in daycare full time. And it was a rigorous schedule for her. 2 nights a week. She'd have to be away from home for 12 hours. We'd have to meet him at this neutral location. It's dark, it's raining, the roads are bad. As much feedback as I gave him that this was so hard on her, and can we please possibly figure out a different way for him to get that 1.5 hour visit by extending his weekend visits or something, he just wouldn't budge. And he could see the difficulty for her in terms of her sleep schedule.
And for you.
Exactly. He knew. And he didn't care if it was hard on me, then she was just a byproduct of that. So that went on for about 6 months. And then I just said, enough. I learned boundaries from BTR, from you and the BTR group. Like, you can take me to court, but I'm decreasing this to 1 night a week on her weeknights. And he was a lot of talk, but then no action. Because if you get down to the truth of everything of what he actually wants, it's not that extra 1.5 hours. It was more, like you said, it was impacting our lives. We had no free time. We're exhausted all the time. We're bending to his will, a lot of crazy making, in that he'll say, you never give me any time, da da da. At first, I was over explaining and deflecting, and now I don't do any of that. The parenting app has been so great because it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all documented.
Mm-hmm.
It's very validating to look back and go, oh, this is all the times I offered. He knows. He doesn't try to make up any extra time with her. So it's playing itself out. And the less I engage, the less of a rise he gets from me, the more I have cut down any interaction on the app to like the bare minimum. He shrinks away.
I love that you're using the BTR Living Free Workshop strategies. That is awesome. The BTR Living Free Workshop teaches you how to think about the abuser so that you are in a state of mind to be able to respond to them in a way that protects you.
I love that.
It's hard because the way other therapists teach boundaries, women are like, but he keeps crossing my boundaries. And that's because the way the therapists teach it is not helpful to victims of abuse, because it's possible to set boundaries where he actually can't cross them. And women who take the Living Free Workshop learn. In your case, you were like, okay, he's threatening to take me to court. He wants me to be terrified of losing my daughter. He's threatening me, so I'll do what he wants. So I'm just going to say, sounds good. This is my attorney's phone number. Let me know how it goes. I mean, some will take you to court, but the majority of them think the threats in and of themselves will work. And they don't actually want to spend the time and money and energy to take you to court because in reality, their actions rarely match their words. In that way, women can be delivered because the strategy is not believing them.
Exactly. What you said about the boundaries, I think of that all the time and I share it with other people because I learned it from you in the podcast and the group, because many people think it's a lot of words to describe your boundary. And I love that it's an action you take. I advocate for myself and my daughter. And like I said, I have the documentation to support decisions. So I've protected myself that way.
Yeah, that's the only thing that will actually protect you. It's like in the beginning, you're trying to figure out, is this abuse? What's going on? If you're using the living free strategies, you don't have to ask him, hey, are you abused? Or tell him this is abuse. You don't have to bring it up. You can just observe and you could see that he's abusive. If you see that he's abusive, you need to get to safety, but you don't need to say
No.
anything about it. And if you tell them your boundary, it's a big giant flag that says, hey, this is how to abuse me. So once you know they're an abuser, you never want to tell them.
I learned that from you too recently. I think it was over 30 counts accusing me of being a parental alienator and a narcissist, that I'm mentally unstable. And I don't comment. There's no point to it. I learned from you to think about, how do you feel when that happened to you? And then boundaries, because he was sometimes snide or joking. And I've experienced this with other people I've dated in the beginning. If you put up a boundary, he would be like, oh yes, you're right, I should have that boundary. But then I felt like there was undermining, diminishing me, invalidating me, make snide remarks about or attack your character. And those things, I watch my own daughter give a no. If she's like having a video call, no, I don't like that book. And I watch the response and I'm like, oh, I know that. Of course you like it. You just don't know you do yet. This constant kind of harassment almost, I just pushed aside because I was like, oh, when I brought it to him, he did say he would go along with it. It would be gut wrenching. But then I learned boundaries from you, and now he doesn't come around the back door and harass. Just the whole understanding of boundaries from you and changed everything.
I am so glad to hear that. Women tell me that all the time. They say the living free strategies changed everything. So thank you so much for coming to share your story. I appreciate the time that you've taken to talk today.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything.